But first, let's talk about Nevermore. Let's talk about Warrel Dane of Nevermore, who sadly passed away 7 years ago this month. He passed away 7 years ago on December 13th, actually. I absolutely love Nevermore. Definitely one of my favorite bands, and a band that had a huge impact on me early on in the show, Warrel Dane being that guy. Warrel Dane and Jim Shepard, actually. And even Jeff Loomis back in the old days, but more Jim and Warrel. And I say that because they were, again, within that first couple of years, one of those bands I ended up getting to meet. I got to hang out with them. Just a really cool group of guys. And if you see this poster, check this out. Autographed by the band on the Dreaming Neon Black tour. That's actually the tour I first met these guys. So I'm going to talk about how I first ended up getting into music created by the late Warrel Dane. The first album I ever bought was Refuge Denied by Sanctuary, along with Into the Mirror Black. Actually, both of those albums I ended up picking up. We go back to 1994, folks. The dark age of heavy metal, and I'm of course the guy that falls in love with heavy metal music back in the 90s when grunge was the thing and heavy metal was not the thing, and the media tried to kill it. And I remember going into a music store and I see this album called Refuge Denied by Sanctuary, and there was Into the Mirror Black right behind it. And I remember picking up a copy of Refuge Denied. I remember looking at it and saying to myself, produced by Dave Mustaine. Wow, this has got to be really cool. It's got to be heavy metal. Big Megadeth fan back then, of course. Still am a big Megadeth fan. But I got to see his name on the back of that CD. I immediately bought it at the very high price of $5 because all of the heavy metal releases were on clearance due to the alleged unpopularity of the genre. And then, of course, I decided to spend another $5 on Into the Mirror Black. So get those albums home. I listened to the song Battle Angels, and I'm like, first of all, I heard Warrel Dane hitting these high notes, and I was blown away. I'm like, this guy is a monster vocalist. He's a phenomenal singer. And, they had a cover of White Rabbit on that album. Into the Mirror Black was a little bit more toned down and a little more progressive, but I loved both of those albums. And sadly, like many other metal bands, they had broken up, and I ended up finding out that Warrel Dane had formed another band with Jim Shepard, the bass player of Sanctuary, called Nevermore. And I ended up picking up the first two Nevermore albums. The first album, then there was an EP called In Memory, I believe. And I ended up getting both of those releases and really liking them a lot. And then, of course, I had followed the band ever since. So The Politics of Ecstasy came out. Really loved that album. And then we have the album Dreaming Neon Black. Now let's go to 1999. I'm a year in on the Metal Command show. About a year after the show started. A guy named Andrew Sample, who worked for Century Media, says, hey, I can get you an interview with Warrel and Jim, and you get to meet them when they come through Cleveland. And obviously I'm jumping at the chance because I love this band a lot. And I get to I interviewed Jim Shepard on the phone. Then I ended up interviewing Warrel, and then I got to meet them. Now, the autographed poster from Dreaming Neon Black that was signed, of course, the band signed it for me. The late Tim Calvert, who sadly passed away, was the other guitar player, along with Jeff Loomis, and he had obviously Tim Calvert played in Forbidden, so I already knew him from the band Forbidden. I was really excited to meet these guys, and I got to hang out with them. And it was a really, really positive experience. So, and I remember this is really funny. They toured with Iced Earth, and I believe Destiny's End was the opener. Now, Destiny's End was a band fronted by James Rivera. They had an album called Breathe Deep the Dark. Really good group of guys. They also came on my show during that time period, as did John Schaefer from Iced Earth. So I'm going to see three bands that I interviewed multiple times that I absolutely love, and they're playing on a tour together. I believe Destiny's End was the opener. I could be wrong. But I know Nevermore toured with Iced Earth and when they came through Cleveland. Now, they came to a venue called Peabody's Down Under, which back then was in a place called the Flats in Cleveland. It was right along right along the river. Sorry, I must have slipped up a little bit there. And I got to see them play at this venue, the small little club. I met a lot of great bands at Peabody's. I met Saxon there. I met Chuck Schuldiner from Death. Met the guys in Hammerfall. I saw Sabotage play there. I mean, I got to see a lot of bands play in that venue. So anyhow, I interview Warrel Dane. There's an upstairs backstage room. Him and Jim Shepard and even Jeff Loomis was in on the interview with us as well. Interviewed all three of them. Great people. A lot of fun. So as we're walking downstairs, Warrel pulls me aside and says, you mentioned, because I talked about the first album, Refuge Denied. I talked about the song Battle Angels. Warrel looks at me and said something like along the lines, and I don't remember the exact quote, but he said, there's a guy at Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles, the magazine up in Canada, that says I am unable to sing the song Battle Angels. And I looked at him. I said, why does he think that? And I don't remember what he said, but it was an article I guess they had written. And again, or it was maybe an interview this person did. I'm not 100% sure. And I think it was Brave Words. Anyway, he goes and he mentions it to me, and he says, I'm going to go on stage. I'm going to hit every note of that song. You know, me being 20, 21 years old, I'm like, oh, okay. You know, I can't wait to hear it, right? It's the first time I'm seeing this band. Well, they go on stage. About halfway through the set, Warrel Dane gets up on stage and yells, so-and-so from this magazine, I believe it was Brave Words, said, I am incapable of singing Battle Angels. And he goes, F him, I'm going to sing it. He sang it, and he hit every single note on stage. It sounded just like the album. And I'm this kid watching this, and I'm like, holy crap. I mean, Nevermore was such a great band to see live. I went to a lot of their shows over the years. They were just such a phenomenal band from a live perspective. I mean, they were so tight. They were good. Jeff Loomis is a monster guitar player. And Warrel not only was he a great vocalist and frontman, but he was just a really cool dude to talk to and get to know. And he had a lot of witty things to say about anything. I mean, he made a lot of sarcastic comments. I remember one time we were talking about record deals from bands, and he said, you know what? He asked me if I knew what a record deal was. I said, yeah. I go, it's a contract. He goes, no, it's not a contract. It is 60 pages of a band getting effed. That's pretty much what he said to me. But just a very, very positive experience with the guys from Nevermore. Before I end this segment, the last interview I did with Warrel was in 2014. And I remember asking him if he had any last words for the fans listening to the interview. And check out what he said with this clip right here.
Well, I have one more question for you, Warrel, and it was great to have you on my show once again. And do you have any last words to say to the fans, and maybe give out some websites and places where people could check out Sanctuary?
Oh my God! I guess you can do that just about anywhere, checking out stuff about Sanctuary. But if you want a final statement, this is my blanket statement, and I really like it. So just don't get mad at me if it sounds corny, but start your own religion, people, because the ones we have right now are just not working.
And that is the last interview clip from the last interview I ever did with Warrel Dane of Nevermore. Folks, Nevermore had a tremendous impact on myself. Everyone that I knew who was friends with Warrel Dane or knew him personally had nothing but good things to say about him. I always had a positive experience with the guy when I would interview him on my show or when I've met him. And I love the music that he helped create. I still miss the guy to this day. And pretty much everyone who was a fan of Nevermore, of his solo albums, or the albums he did with Sanctuary, all agree he was a definite loss for the metal scene. With that being said, I'm curious, what is your favorite album that he sang on? Mine is The Godless Endeavor by Nevermore. That's my favorite Nevermore album. And favorite album that Warrel sang on? Let me know in the comments. And let me know in the comments any great experiences you had, either meeting Warrel Dane, hanging out with him, whatever. I want to hear what you have to say. Hey everybody, Tony here from the Metal Command podcast. Again, I appreciate your support. Since 1998, I have hosted this show in one form or another, starting off in radio and now in the podcast format. Again, thanks for watching, and if you like what you see and hear on this show, by all means, please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video, and if you see this program on any other form of social media, please give me a follow there. Again, I always appreciate your support.